And what is up, everybody? This is Darren talking. Uh, this past Saturday, I was at the UFC gym in White Plains, which I strongly recommend going to. They got some great cardio kickboxing classes. The jiu-jitsu class is good. But, the reason I was there this past Saturday is because Ken Shamrock was there. He was giving a special class, taught us a few techniques, and even I got to have a small conversation with him, and taught me tweaked a couple of techniques that I not necessarily learned wrong, but stuff to do differently and just greatly improve your fight game. But during the question and answer session, somebody asked him what two fights that you wish you could that you regret having never done. And he said, I wish I could have fought Tito Ortiz in my prime, which is a joke because he fought him 3 times and lost all 3 times. And he goes, and then I never had a rubber match against Royce Gracie. Now, he spoke very, very highly towards Royce Gracie. Okay, now Royce Gracie, for those of you that don't know, or the history behind Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to begin with. His father, Elio Gracie, was a very, very frail boy to the point where he actually had permission not to go to school because even walking up a flight of stairs was too much for him. He would pass out and have dizzy spells, stuff like that. And his father, was had a lot of political pull. And when Count Koma, a Japanese jiu-jitsu master, came to Brazil, he needed obviously a few favors, and in payment, what he decided to do was teach his oldest son Carlos jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu. But after about 4 years of training with this, Count Koma had to leave, and basically just left a very, very rough, unrefined jiu-jitsu to Carlos. Now, Carlos being the oldest brother, Elio sees all the techniques and everything, and says and realizes that it requires a lot of strength and outmuscling your opponent. But for somebody like me, I need to be able, as a little guy, I need to be able to take down big guys. So he started to think and modified it and tweaked it. And basically, he was Brazil's first ever national sports hero. They never had anybody. They never had a Michael Jordan, never had a Derek Jeter, Muhammad Ali. Brazil never had anything like that until Elio Gracie, once he started fighting in Vale Tudo, which is basically just no holds barred. Vale Tudo translation, pretty much no rules. Anything goes, and he was not undefeated. His most recognizable loss, from what I understand, I don't know how many fights he may or may not have lost, but he won a ridiculous amount of them, him and his brothers. And the first loss ever recorded was against Kimura being the Japanese heavyweight champion, and Elio Gracie, obviously not a heavyweight. I have no idea how much he weighed, but like I said, he was a very, very frail person, and he fought Kimura for like over 3 hours until Kimura finally dislocated his shoulder with the move that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has adopted and called the Kimura. So. The Gracie challenge was still going strong. His sons, most notable in the U.S., Royce, because of what he did in UFC. When the Gracie challenge was put out by Royce Gracie, the oldest son in California, basically it was come one, come all. Any martial art discipline, will challenge you and will beat you, and basically just any style, you name it, they brought, they came and they all lost. And then it was through the DVD, the two videos at the time, VHSs, Gracie's in Action, At first, it's back in the olden days in Brazil, and then of course the second volume was the Gracie Challenge in the United States, and a couple of the instances, it's Royce Gracie, it's Rickson Gracie. Rodion stepped up a couple times. Some of the students stepped up, but in one in particular was Royce. Royce never had the opportunity to prove himself like his older brothers. Unlike most of his older brothers, they all fought heavyweight. They were already world champions. I believe Rickson Gracie, who's over 500 professional fights and undefeated. He's pretty much the greatest fighter of all time. But he was doing it before it was cool. And Old Vale Tudo. Then of course, by the time mixed martial arts started picking up steam, like his time was over. Then Royce Gracie, who I've met, great guy, has over 300 professional fights. Ridiculous. But with Royce Gracie, when it came time to for UFC, what happens is, when Art Davie came to Rodion, because they were friends, they put together. The reason why they put this tournament together was for the sole purpose of showing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and they wanted originally. Art Davie thought it was going to be Rickson because Rickson's the champion. It only makes sense. But keep in mind, Rickson's a heavyweight, so he would have weighed just as much as weighed just as much as Ken Shamrock. And keep in mind, Ken Shamrock was the only other person there that knew how to fight on the ground, and that's still he still didn't have an advantage against Royce Gracie in the first UFC. So when Royce fought in the first UFC, because now he has the opportunity to prove himself, he's like 176 pounds, only 26 years old, the youngest and the smallest competitor there, and he won the whole thing. And then UFC 2, they tell him, okay, listen, they already know your secret, so you got to be more careful. UFC 3, won the whole thing. UFC 4, he was very, very, it's weird. Like, you think you're doing everything, you're doing training. It's happened to me a couple times. You're training, taking everything, doing everything you're supposed to do, and then sometimes, like especially when it's game time, all of a sudden something's wrong. You don't know what happened, but something's wrong. And after his fight with Chemo, basically Chemo pushed his body somewhere that he wasn't used to going, because the first two tournaments, Royce Gracie fought less than 10 minutes, beating guys that quickly. Tapped out Ken Shamrock in 57 seconds, under a minute. Ridiculous. I mean, especially when people know, majority of people know who Ken Shamrock is. They've never seen him fight, or they have seen him fight in UFC, or any other venue. But by that time, Royce Gracie was long gone. Royce Gracie fought in the first 5 UFCs. Won the first 2. Had to pull out of the tournament for the the third one. Then, comes back, and Ron Van Cleef had no business being there. That was ridiculous. Ron Van Cleef, I'm not taking anything away from him from what he's done in the past. Man's a great master, obviously phenomenal martial artist. He had no bit. He might have done better if he'd have gone up against somebody else. Maybe. I don't know. But going up against Royce Gracie made him feel every second of every day of every year how old he was. Had no business stepping in there. Then going up against Keith Hackney. I mean, Keith Hackney put down some really big dudes, and Keith Hackney, clearly a lot stronger and more aware of Royce's game, hurt Royce pretty bad, but still couldn't beat him. Then of course you got Dan Severn in the finals of UFC 4. Dan Severn, phenomenal wrestler. Clearly, this big man, who's obviously very, very technical, very, very strong. Clearly, this man can beat Royce Gracie. No, 15 minutes, all of a sudden. In all fairness, I'm not making any excuses unlike Dan Severn did. And again, not taking away anything from Dan Severn, because he was a great UFC champion as well. But to understand that, you signed up to a no holds barred competition. There are no rules. If you couldn't bring yourself to punch somebody, that's your own fault. I mean, hell, you breeze through your first two fights, and now you're in the finals, and all of a sudden you don't have the stomach to really hurt somebody. Whose fault is that? And to win via triangle choke was very impressive, because nobody had ever seen anything like that before. Because they even try to say, oh yeah, he's not. Oh, Royce, he doesn't really have anything here. He's just trying to make room. And apparently, Dan Severn thought the same thing right up until the point where he started tapping out. UFC 5. This is when Royce Gracie got his first, his first rematch with. This is the first ever super fight, and I've touched base on this. Is 38 minutes long, ridiculously long, longest UFC fight to date. Unfortunately, it ended in a draw due to the fact I would, if they would have had judges, I would have said Ken Shamrock won due to the fact that landed a nasty punch which swelled up, or it's pretty much swelled this Royce Gracie's eyes shut, real nasty. But at the same time, he didn't really finish. He didn't really finish the fight. And Royce, on the other hand, was on his back the entire time, and he was landing, downward strikes with his feet onto, Ken Shamrock's back. Nasty kidney shots. Keep in mind, there's no holds barred at the time. This was not mixed martial arts. This was no holds barred. First ever mixed martial arts organization was King of Pancrase in Japan, which Ken Shamrock was a part of and was one of their many champions. Rules were different, of course. They didn't have gloves because they weren't allowed to punch with a closed fist. Everything was open hand, so majority of the time using ridge hand, knife hand, ridge hand, palm strikes, stuff like that, which Bas Rutten was notorious for. Ridiculous, man. A lot of guys, they'll do the push. They might slap, maybe ridge hand, maybe knife hand, something like that. But Bas Rutten, basically cock them all the way back like this and just bam, bam, over and over again. The sport was still pretty vicious. It was fought in a ring. They wore wrestling sneakers and shin pads. And granted, you can win by submission, you win by knockout, or I don't think there was there really wasn't no standing 8 count or anything like that. But at the same time, if you're in a submission, you grab the rope, they have to let go. But in the United States, that's called shoot wrestling. It was shoot wrestling. Well, Pride had different rules in UFC. In Pride, you weren't allowed to elbow. Pride, you were allowed to kick on the ground and knee on the ground, which I loved. I missed that. North south position, and just bam, bam, knee in a guy to the head. Mark Coleman, Quentin Rampage Jackson. Oh man, any of the ground and pound guys, back in the days of Pride, man, were notorious for that, man, and I loved it. But come to the UFC, they allow elbows, but they fight in the cage. And even how you win was different. The 10-point must system in Pride was, can you finish? Like whoever finishes the strongest. They still consider that mixed martial arts. Because I was thinking to myself, in the what they call the dark ages of the UFC, when Pride was shining in its heyday, because Japan is all about was all about MMA, while it was still being demonized in the United States. Pride basically took off, and I remember watching, it was Pride 5. And seeing the referee telling them, okay, they got to get up. No, you're not allowed to do this. And showing the yellow cards, this, that, the other. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? For no holds barred, there's an awful lot of rules. It's because it wasn't no holds barred anymore, and it took a long time for people to get out of that mindset. Now but I digress. Back to Royce Gracie. Royce Gracie, after winning, after the draw at UFC 5, never competed in UFC again. Never competed professionally again until the year 2000, when where he first qualifies for the 2000 Grand Prix, the Pride Grand Prix, and then he wins the first round, which got him into the first selection for the first first 8 guys. It was 16 guys selected. You got to fight, and then okay, now you're in the Grand Prix, and he won that. Then he goes up against Kazushi Sakuraba. Sakuraba just finished putting I was shocked to see, because in Pride 5, Royce Gracie did a great job and won. I believe he won that fight. But then Renzo Gracie won his fight. But then to see Royce Gracie, I had never seen Royce Gracie fight before that time, and he was pretty much completely helpless against Sakuraba. I was shocked, and the referee stopped the fight entirely too early because Royler didn't tap. It didn't look like he was gonna tap, but that elbow looked very, that arm looked like it was about to pop out. It looked like Sakuraba was gonna do some damage. So I don't blame the referee for stopping the fight. Then it's Royce's turn because there was some bad blood between Sakuraba and Rickson. You wanted to fight Rickson, but like I said, by the time all this is happening, Rickson's at the end of his career. He's not going for the big fights or anything like that, man. He's got nothing else. He's got nothing else to prove. While his much younger brother Royce, on the other hand, even Royce had nothing to prove after winning 3 UFC tournaments like that. Really, nothing else for you to do. Then to go into the Grand Prix against Sakuraba, but they have special rules for him. It's going to be 10-minute rounds because that's how it started. I think in UFC as well. It was 10-minute rounds, and Pride started off. It would be 2 10-minute rounds, and this time what they do is they say, oh, but there's no limit to how many rounds you fight. He fought for 90 minutes, 9 rounds. That's unheard of in mixed martial arts. For an hour and a half, this guy is fighting, broke his foot, in the middle of the fight. If they'd have just left the special rules alone, Royce would have won on points, because everybody else was fighting 2 10-minute rounds, the first round, and Royce was beating on Sakuraba. Then as it dragged on and on and on, Sakuraba got the upper hand, and with Royce injured, they had to throw in the towel. Then he does this special grappling match with Hidehiko Yoshida, and I don't know if somebody was paid off, but clearly Royce Gracie, 1, didn't tap out, and 2, he was getting smothered. Yoshida didn't have him in anything significant, and that was just a straight grappling match. So they were so fed up, they decided they're gonna have a real fight, but in Pride, but again, special rules, which is ridiculous. So Royce beats the daylights out of Yoshida. I've never seen Royce Gracie throw so many punches before. It was ridiculous. And Yoshida, world judo champion, all Japan judo champion, Olympic gold medalist in judo, and then had a few victories in Pride. The man could not answer the onslaught of war. It was like, you really pissed the man off. And then in other organizations in Japan, he fought Akibono, fought this other big dude that, for whatever reason, Wikipedia left off. Beats this guy bloody. This is stuff he was never able. This is stuff he didn't do in UFC. Now keep in mind, now there's weight classes, now there's rules. Now as far as, and now on top of that, the secret's out and everybody's learning jiu-jitsu, and he's still, he'd still fight and still put a beating on guys. There was one of the young Japanese kid he fought that it was a draw, so he's got 3 draws, but then of course his fight with Matt Hughes, which clearly he lost, but then his second fight, his rematch with Sakuraba, which he won. So, the man's only got 2 losses to his record. He hasn't fought nearly as long as Ken Shamrock has. Ken Shamrock is much older. He's suffered a lot of injuries. UFC will never sign him again. And I said, I said all this because a majority of people really followed Ken Shamrock's career since he was the first mixed martial artist to cross over, and like he had done pro wrestling prior to King of Pancrase, which eventually got him into UFC. But when UFC couldn't pay him, couldn't really pay him, and mixed martial arts in general couldn't really get him any real money, he goes into WWE and had a very promising career in WWE. But I've said my feelings about pro wrestling ever since Chris Benoit died. Chris Benoit did not die from did not do what he did out of roid rage. It wasn't steroids. Granted, clearly the man was using steroids, but it wasn't steroids that did that to him. It was the fact that he had suffered so many head injuries in the ring. Because pro wrestlers, they don't, especially WWE, you really don't get to take a break. You're just constantly going from one city to the next, and you're just constantly performing and injuring yourself over and over again. So what happened to Chris Benoit could easily happen to any other superstar on the roster. Now, nobody's holding a gun to their head and telling them this is what they have to do, but I'd rather not be a fan of organization that would have which forces their employees to do that, and him getting out of pro wrestling, okay, understandable. I think he should be put in the WWE Hall of Fame at least, but his record, unlike Royce Gracie, because keep in mind he's doing King of Pancrase and obviously did phenomenally in King of Pancrase. Then he's UFC's first super fight champion, even though, like I said, I don't really consider him a UFC champion due to the fact that he never won any of the tournaments. And the super fight champion was something a little extra, which I really don't think he earned just for beating Dan Severn. Then just a certain thing, him leaving UFC, him fighting in other organizations, winning the WAMA heavyweight belt, which it's not even like that belt isn't even like World Association of Mixed Martial Arts something. I don't know what it stands for. I don't know, but only other person I know to get it was Fedor Emelianenko, and it's basically awarded to you. It's no organization. It's just it's no professional organization like Affliction try to be, like Strike Force or Elite XC or Bellator or anything like that. It's just these people decided, okay, we're giving you this heavyweight title. It was like, yeah, but you're not you're not a fight promotion. It didn't make any sense. But UFC super fight title, won my heavyweight championship. It was the only, and King of Pancrase, obviously King of Pancrase actually being his most prominent. But in his time in Pride, losing to Don Fry, losing to Sakuraba, losing to who was it? Getting knocked out by Fujita. And then coming back to UFC, losing all three times to Tito Ortiz and Rich Franklin. It is just and then being let go from UFC, not then continuing to fight. One fight he supposedly tested positive for steroids, and his fight license was suspended. He's currently doing a Christian documentary, about his life. He is is a fellow brother in Christ, but the man has hit some serious downfalls. And now, granted, other companies had approached him to do this, a documentary, but he knew that they would leave out God and the God and Jesus parts of it all. And because of that, he went with the same people that did Holy Ghost, which is I believe it was in theaters, and obviously it's made a big impact. And he, like, looking at him, granted, he's about as strong as he ever was, but as far as being able to do another fight, never gonna happen. Not gonna happen. He's not gonna get no big money fights anytime soon. However, I found a loophole to that. Currently, I don't know if anybody's heard of Metamoris. Metamoris is basically professional jiu-jitsu, professional submission grappling. They tried doing something like this called Real Pro Wrestling, and it did not catch on. Metamoris, on the other hand, due to the fact that you've got so many big names within MMA as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just straight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, now you have a venue kind of like Abu Dhabi Combat Club. Difference being, Abu Dhabi Combat Club is a tournament format, and you don't win anything. Basically, just the prestige of that, and that's actually the most prestigious jiu-jitsu tournament you could win. The Metamoris is one fight. It's 20 minutes. It's no points. You win by submission. That's it. And like anything other than that is just a draw. Not Matt Serra. Chael Sonnen fought in that, just lost. Josh Barnett was just crowned Metamoris' first heavyweight champion. Royce Gracie had his long-awaited rematch with Eddie Bravo, and because even Eddie Bravo, as honored as he was to go up against Royce Gracie in Abu Dhabi, he kind of felt like it was a fluke because it was a semifinals. Caught him in a triangle, great. Then loses to to another jiu-jitsu legend. And this long-awaited rematch between the two of them ends in a draw, and both of them put on a clinic to each other, and it ends in a draw. But man, like, the dexterity, the flexibility of these men, it was just ridiculous. It was a sight to behold. Me being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner and seeing two masters go at it like that, it was great. But Royce Gracie is not planning on putting the gloves on and stepping in the cage anytime soon. Ken Shamrock can't put on the gloves and step in the cage anytime soon. Why can't they just get on the mat then? I mean, think about it. He's clearly he's versed in submission holds. In WWE. He was not, known for being a master of submissions and constantly going up against both Owen and because submissions was supposed to be their thing till he showed up. And when for Royce had one of his nephews step in there, fight to a draw. His older brother went in there, fought to a draw. He even Royce even stepped up to Eddie Bravo, ready to ready to knock his head off because he thought Eddie Bravo was talking trash about, and disrespecting their family. And he didn't understand where that Eddie Bravo didn't know where that came from, but that's neither here nor there. Metamoris is the perfect venue. Granted, it's not no holds barred, it's not mixed martial arts, but at least it's an avenue to get the both of them to face off against each other again. Whoever, this is one of my longest rants ever, because I had to cover the careers of two different men, and I never met Royce Gracie. I'm pretty sure he's a cool guy. Ken Shamrock had nothing but nice things to say about him, especially in his fighting style and how he fought. And I'm talking about how, because even in the modern rules, with the middle of the 2000s, before his fight with Matt Hughes, which was in 2006, how even his rematch against Sakuraba, how the style of fighting that he used, which was not, honest to God, not that much different from what he started with in UFC 1, was still proven effective. I don't see him winning I don't see Royce Gracie winning a UFC weight class title belt anytime soon. It'd be nice if they gave him a belt at all. All he ever got was that one medal for UFC 1, and then just 2 big checks from the other 2 tournaments that he won. And to see him again, is strictly grappling. Ken Shamrock also master grappler. I'm pretty sure he's done his share of learning how to counter jiu-jitsu, or learning how to use jiu-jitsu and other submissions properly. It would be great to see the two of them go at it in an element that both of them are clearly comfortable in, even though they can't strike. Who cares? They're both gonna get on the mat, and it would be awesome to see. Chael Sonnen, never really did jiu-jitsu. Fought in Metamoris, lost, but did a pretty decent job. And Gracie family, Royce, if you're listening to me, try Metamoris, Ken Shamrock, having to listen to me again. Like I said, as a fellow brother in Christ, I appreciate everything you did for me and White Plains, and teaching me like all that stuff. But again, like, if you want that rubber match, that's the only avenue I see. And you know what? It would be great for you. It would absolutely be great for you. Metamoris, get this deal signed. Anybody who's watching who knows Ken Shamrock, who knows Royce Gracie, or any member of the Gracie family, somebody please get this match, because that's something every MMA fan wants. That's something Royce Gracie wants. That's something Ken Shamrock wants. They want to put the nail in the coffin once and for all, who between the two of them was better. And I can't think of a better way than just to do it on the mat. If you can't punch, but whatever. Somebody's getting tapped out. No ifs, ands, or buts. Someone's gonna get tapped out. Gi or no gi, that's up to Royce if he wants to do gi, and can't do it just like he did for UFC 1. Either way, I don't know anybody that wouldn't want to see that. All right, I already got Submission Radio they got my back. They agree with me. That'd be a great match. That would be a great match to see because neither one of them, like I said, they can't put the gloves on again, but they can still get on the mat. And I'm done talking. You guys have a good night.